Ciao a tutti ragazzi e benvenuti nel mio nuovo video. Io sono Cosmo Infinito e oggi siamo tornati qua in una live. In questa live parleremo della Crew Dragon che tornerà dopo 2 mesi di permanenza dall'ISS a terra sul nostro pianeta. Allora lo Splashdown verrà nel mare del Messico intorno alle 8:48, quindi abbiamo ancora un po' di tempo da fare e nel frattempo setto la copertina della live, setto tutto e poi dai, ce la faremo a partire. Allora, intanto guardiamo come. Allora, vediamo dove sono. Sì, ok. Non si vedrà dall'Italia. In questo momento è dietro di me praticamente, se si basiamo sulla Crew Dragon appunto. Però sentiamo cosa dicono. Speriamo bene ragazzi. Sono ancora traumatizzato dalla Space Shuttle Columbia. Però va bene, cioè dopo non ero neanche nato, però me lo ricordo comunque come lancio, come tutto quello che è successo. Speriamo bene, speriamo che tenga la cosa di maschera, la copertura per l'atmosfera, e non dico incrociamo le dita perché non c'è niente da incrociare, non c'è niente da fare, però speriamo. Intanto mettiamo la live pubblica. Ok, modifichiamo, mettiamo la copertina, mettiamo tutto. Come titolo possiamo mettere "Io ragazzi sono al mare", lo faccio dal tablet appunto, non volevo mancare a questo appuntamento. Endeavour. Splashdown, Crew Dragon, Endeavour, Splashdown, miniatura, una bella miniatura ragazzi, comunque abbastanza. E selezione di immagini, esploriamo i file del nostro computer, sono molto belli, quindi volendo possiamo anche andare. Allora, speriamo bene. Allora, ok, ci siamo. Non dovrebbe mancare, manca meno di un'ora penso allo Splashdown, quindi perfetto, diciamo dico perfettamente, sì, manca, scusate, manca sì un'ora.
To intersect with that point off the coast of Pensacola where they're going to be splashing down.
Yeah,
this is the moment where Dragon is fully committed to the re-entry point. Again, we are aiming for.
Dopo quando c'è lancio mi tolgo dall'audio, tutto ve lo faccio vedere anche senza audio, però non è colpa mia.
Right after Splashdown occurs. Once again, if you're just joining us, we are now in the final steps of the deorbit sequence. The deorbit burn will be starting here in just a couple of seconds.
Allora, queste persone comunque sono 18 ore che sono quasi 24 ore che sono qui davanti a sti monitor e madonna. Poi c'è quella ragazza nel fondo che è il mio idolo, quella che fa i countdown. per la SpaceX, quindi va bene. Raga, dai. Poi c'è Musk, il Force Fearless, in prima fila ragazzi c'è Musk, sono tutti, ci sono. Michelle Dessot.
Able to fly these two incredible humans to the International Space Station and back is such an honor, and we're just really
Scrivete, mi
excited to
raccomando, in
get our
chat.
space dads home
E
safely
niente,
and back to their
speriamo
families
bene,
as quickly as possible.
non per Splashdown, ma per live. Veramente molto che non la faccio. Ho cambiato proprio, ho cancellato tutti i video, sono ripartito da zero, facendo quello che a me piace. E poi ciao a tutti, siamo due spettatori, scrivete in chat che vi saluto. E perfetto, niente, andiamo a vedere. Intanto seguitemi su Instagram per favore, che voglio essere seguita su Instagram.
And all within the last 10 minutes, again, it seemed like we had slow progress of events all morning, and then
Speriamo
within the
bene.
last 10 minutes, we had a couple of things happening.
Faremo su un'oretta di live, ma
itself into the
neanche.
appropriate position to jettison its trunk.
Dai, Crew Dragon.
And it did so successfully, nominally, and then it initiated the deorbit burn just a couple minutes ago. Like I mentioned earlier, this deorbit burn is the last time those 4 forward Draco thrusters will fire.
Diciamo che
Forward kind of meaning
il video dello snorkeling in Sardegna è andato molto bene. E niente, follow me on Facebook. Grazie. Vediamo che ore sono le 8:02. Attenzione, sono le 8:02. 46 minuti dovrebbero mancare ancora. 6 minuti. Non lo sanno neanche loro, sinceramente. Raga, dai, ho uno schermo del tablet che è come un computer, quindi è usabile da Dio. Peccato che non ho due monitor, però. Musk in prima fila. Chissà cosa farà questa grande persona che della testa. Sono tornato mezz'ora fa dalla piscina e ho fatto la doccia di velocità, ho piazzato il tablet in mezzo minuto e sono andato a cosarmi ai live.
Afterward, let me check my timeline here real quick. In just under 44 minutes,
Andiamo raga,
we'll have the
dai.
initial parachute deployment. So that is essentially when we will be deploying the drogue parachutes, the small parachutes that are designed to
mettiamo un po' la webcam, proviamo a fare la webcam dopo. Sono inguardabile se mettessi la webcam. Sono inguardabile. No, in un modo che si spaventerebbero. Si spaventa la gente. Molto. Molto si spaventa la gente perché ha dei capelli che sono inguardabili. Sono bronzati, di cui sono abbastanza felice comunque. Però del resto mi urto a vedermi. Se mi guardo mi urto da solo, quindi non ci tengo. Si bevono il caffè. Che ore sono? In America quante ore ci sono di fuso orario? Non lo so, non mi ricordo. Non lo so, non mi ricordo e non ci voglio pensare.
To its entry attitude, essentially heat shield pointed down and into the line of velocity, and that heat shield protecting them from the heat of re-entry. Temperatures getting up to about 35 degrees.
Dopo quando tornerò dalla vacanza ricomincerò gli normali col computer, dovrebbero iniziare. Questi sono normali per Dio di registro, però fatti da me potrebbero anche stare. Siamo in live. Metto il condizionatore su che sono sul balcone. Butto fuori un'aria calda che madonna santa. Non si respira, non si sta bene. I'm so happy, la 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 la.
So right now, during this burn, we just heard a call that we're halfway through the burn and everything is looking great, everything performing.
Adesso guardiamo quanti minuti esatti mancano dai ragazzi. Esattamente 45 minuti. E va benissimo, cioè. I don't mi lamento, perché non ho bisogno di lamentarmi, quindi.
On the forward bulkhead of the capsule. There on your screen you actually can see what Bob
Eccoli
and Doug are
loro
seeing
qui
right now.
dentro. Dai raga, dai. Go Bob and Doug, go Bob and Doug.
So on the left and the right of the center screen, that is the deorbit. That is the deorbit monitoring tool.
Volete i sottotitoli in italiano, ma non ci sono secondo me sottotitoli in italiano. Non ci sono i sottotitoli, maledetti loro, che ne fate? Io no, perché non ci sono i sottotitoli, raga? Beh, mistero. Perché veramente non fare i sottotitoli? Io non lo so che cazzo facciano. Ciao Reike. Ciao Riccardo. Bella. Allora, fra un quarto d'ora stacco l'audio, però dovreste vedere tutto. Perché anche io devo andare a mangiare, quindi sono una persona normale come tutti, e quindi devo andare a mangiare anch'io. Allora, perfetto. Mancano esattamente 44 minuti. Il tempo passa lento, passa lentamente il tempo. Stacco un attimo l'audio e ci vediamo fra 20 minuti. Perché in live non ci sono i sottotitoli non lo so neanche io, fra. Ok ragazzi, niente, io purtroppo vado a mangiare. Ho provato a disattivare un attimo l'audio per mettere i sottotitoli, ma non ci sono perché sono stronzi questi americani, che cazzo. La live della NASA forse potrebbe averli, però non voglio cambiare 90.000 live. Io vado a mangiare e tanto l'audio ve lo sentite. Perfetto, anche un po' di cose, però ve lo sentite. Ciao ragazzi, ci vediamo fra un quarto d'ora.
There is no going back. Yeah, we already have the recovery team ready and on standby. They've been there for quite some time now. Here we have about 90 seconds left in the burn. Weather looking great at the splashdown site off Pensacola. Winds just around 2.5 miles per hour. Sea being described as like glass by the Corps here in Hawthorne, radioing up to the crew. Ended up getting fantastic weather for this first crewed splashdown of Dragon. We are 1 minute away from the end of deorbit burn. again, this burn is placing Dragon on its final trajectory to the landing site off of the coast of Pensacola, Florida. That is in the Gulf of Mexico. And our recovery vessel, Go Navigator, and the recovery team are ready and waiting to see Bob and Doug come back through the atmosphere. Like we said, this deorbit burn, during this deorbit burn, they're not actually re-entering the atmosphere just yet. That won't happen for about another half hour or so. This is essentially just lining up Dragon on the right course to that splashdown site.
Yeah, still at an altitude of about 254 statute miles over planet Earth. We are coming up on 10 seconds from the end of the burn, so we'll stand by and wait for the call out to the crew on the burn performance.
Dragon, SpaceX, deorbit burn complete, performance nominal, nose cone closure initiated.
Nominal burn, nose cone inward. All right. Deorbit burn complete. We heard the call. Nominal burn. Bob and Doug are on their way back home. This burn commits them to re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. All we have left now is to wait. That was really one of the last major moments before they start re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. We'll have the nose cone closure coming up next. That should be coming in just a couple of minutes, as we had about a 3-minute span between the end of the deorbit burn and that moment.
Yeah, the nose cone is actually currently in the closing process, so it doesn't just snap shut. It does slowly close and lock. So right now, that nose cone is in the process of moving back into the closed position, and we will hear the call out for whenever it has fully closed and whenever the latches have secured.
Data, it looks like it's about halfway there. It's opened a little bit more than 90 degrees. I think the exact count was 110 degrees opening range, or range of motion for the nose cone. So we're a little more than halfway now to getting that nose cone closed.
I have just heard that we have a visual on nose cone closure. So it'll take a minute for the hooks to close in. They close in a series, so the first series will close and then the second will follow, and that'll take about a minute to complete.
Alright, well, as we just wait for the finish to that nose cone closure, we'll have a bit of time again. We'll have about 20 minutes, or a little over 21 from right now, until we really start re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. We're expecting that entry interface in about 21 minutes, and then right around that time we'll also be looking for that blackout we've been talking about. We've had a little bit of what we call radicom at this point, so you'll hear kind of some sporadic interruptions in the audio transmission just because of how Dragon was oriented for the trunk jettison and for the actual deorbit burn. But that blackout period will be due to the plasma that builds up around the capsule, interfering with those antennas either sending or receiving data.
So I've heard the call out that the first set of hooks for nose cone closure are in motion. So this will complete in 2 sets. The first set is now in motion, so really good news to hear that. Everything looking good so far. Like I mentioned before, in the background, Dragon has inhibited the forward bulkhead Draco thrusters that we just used to complete that deorbit burn. This is to ensure that it's safe to latch that nose cone shut for re-entry. Also, the vehicle has initiated the nitrox purge. Nitrox is simply a mixture of nitrogen and oxygen. It's what we breathe, and the nitrox that is being purged into the system is cooled, so allowing that cool air to circulate around the cabin, but also inside of Bob and Doug's suits, will help to keep them cool and comfortable during re-entry, which will be coming up in about 20 minutes. We're currently tracking 23 minutes and 20 seconds until entry begins. So in case you're just joining us at this point, the nose cone has closed. The forward thrusters have been disabled, and we are latching the nose cone. Currently underway with the first set of hooks. The first of 2 sets. And we just had confirmation that the first set of hooks is closed, so now the second set will begin to close as well.
As we mentioned, after this nose cone is fully closed, we'll have a couple of minutes to catch our breath again, about 20 minutes or just under 20 minutes until Dragon will start to maneuver itself to the entry attitude, essentially pointing the heat shield in the direction of travel, as it's going to be leading the way through the re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere. We'll look to run into that communications blackout at about 36 minutes after the hour, expecting that to last for about 6 minutes, and then we'll get that back shortly before we deploy the drogue parachutes, followed just less than a minute later by the main parachutes, and by that point hopefully we should have some views of Dragon re-entering the Earth's atmosphere and parachuting to a splashdown in the Gulf.
So there in the front row of Mission Control in the center, you can see CEO Elon Musk and our President Gwen Shotwell sitting side by side at those center consoles. In addition to those two, the room is filled with Dragon operators and mission leaders who are continuing to monitor the health and telemetry of the crew and the capsule. Right now, nose cone closure is underway. The first of 2 sets of hook latching has completed. And we just heard a call out that the nose
cone is secure for entry.
Copy, we see you on board.
Alright, great confirmation there. Back and forth from Mission Control here to Bob and Doug up in Dragon Endeavour. That Bob and Doug have also confirmed on their displays that the nose cone has closed nominally and it is secure for entry.
So that nose cone close completion. A lot of tongue twisters with this right now. Coming with Dragon still flying over the South Pacific. It is on its way home. We're going to gradually start to see its altitude dip. Right now, already only 207 miles over the Earth's surface. It was at about 260 miles when it was still over on the other side of the Pacific Ocean off the southwestern coast of Australia when it fired its engines for that deorbit burn. So its altitude going to continue to drop. Once it gets to about 100 kilometers in altitude, or about 62 miles, it's going to begin what's known as entry interface, and that's when it really begins to start to feel the effects of the Earth's atmosphere. Will once again be experiencing lift and drag as it's no longer in that near vacuum environment in low Earth orbit.
So we're essentially stepping into the second half of entry. Dragon is now beginning to flush nitrox into the cabin and continuing to top it off in Bob and Doug's suits as well. Again, this is cool air essentially flowing through the cabin and the suits. This is what will allow them and the cabin itself to remain comfortable during re-entry while those external temperatures reach 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. At this point in time, Dragon's orientation is such that the heat shield is pointing forward, if you will, leading the capsule toward the landing site. If you've been following along over the last couple days, you know that weather has been a big ticket item for us. The recovery team has been busy over the last week working to determine the selection of a landing site. In order to increase the options for space station departures, the team identified a total of 7 possible splashdown locations. In order to meet NASA's timeline requirements for crew recovery, these potential splashdown locations have to be close to a port, and they have to be close to medical facilities. So with all of that in mind, you add the ever-evolving weather conditions of Florida, but also that tropical storm Isaiah that was moving through. And it's easy to see how determining that landing site is quite a complex process. Since Dragon is capable of splashdown on either side of the Florida Panhandle, we in fact have 2 identical and fully equipped recovery vessels ready to support. One in the Gulf of Mexico, which is what we're utilizing today, Go Navigator, and the other located off the east coast of Florida, able to service landing sites in the Atlantic Ocean. That one is Go Searcher. Like I mentioned, today we'll be splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico, just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. Go Navigator, that recovery ship I just mentioned, is in place and ready and waiting for Bob and Doug. The WB-57 plane, if it hasn't taken off already, I'm sure it will be very soon.
It's in the air.
Okay, great. That's what will provide our first views of Dragon during re-entry. We'll get a thermal cam off of that airplane, allowing us to see the capsule as it is re-entering the atmosphere. If you were tuned in for our Demo 1 broadcast, it was basically a big ball of light coming at us. We'll also have cameras on board the recovery vessel, so as Dragon gets closer and is deploying those parachutes, we will also be able to have hopefully some really clear footage of that all occurring as well.
Alright, so Dragon's altitude continuing to dip. Right now about 174 miles over planet Earth. We're under 11 and a half minutes from where we expect to hit entry interface. So that's where Dragon will really start feeling the effects of being in a denser atmosphere. And then we are still tracking that blackout to come right around that same time. We are under 27 minutes away from splashdown. So we are under 27 minutes away from Bob and Doug being on planet Earth for the first time since May 30th.
To kind of put everything in perspective, the Dragon capsule departed from the International Space Station several hours ago, but according to what Dan just said, it's essentially halfway home just based on altitude alone. So the International Space Station is about 250 miles above Earth's surface. I think right now it's between 250 and 300. I think right now it's about 263 miles above Earth's surface. So based on that telemetry that Dan just read off is from an altitude standpoint. Dragon is halfway home, and yet that second half is going to be covered in the next 27-ish minutes while we wait for splashdown and recovery, versus the several hours that we've been covering since yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, we will continue to see its speed drop as it's dropping out of orbit. It's starting to hit the atmosphere. It's starting to slow from the effects of that friction, generating the heat on the heat shield, building up the plasma eventually around the spacecraft. Its speed's going to continue to drop. It's already below 17,000 miles an hour, and it'll drop to essentially a terminal velocity of about 350 miles an hour right as those drogue chutes deploy. And those are going to pop out when sensors on the Dragon spacecraft, both GPS and pressure sensors, tell the spacecraft it's at the right altitude, and then those will automatically deploy. Those drogues coming out of the top section of the spacecraft using two mortars, pyrotechnics essentially, to deploy those to do the initial slowing and stabilizing of the Dragon capsule.
Yeah, and then after that, the main parachutes will pop out and further decelerate it to about 119 miles per hour. And then that will continue to decelerate. And by the time that the capsule is splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico, it's only going 15, 16 miles per hour. So significant reduction in speed there over just the course of a couple minutes. That, of course, is a pretty comfortable speed. The way that the astronauts have described it previously with other types of missions, also landing down, doing land landings at about the same rate. They said it feels like you're in a minor fender bender.
Yeah, you're definitely running into something. You'll feel it, but they do a lot of work with the seats and the restraints with these crew members just to make sure, while it may be a fender bender, you've got more than a seatbelt essentially holding you in. So they're very secure in their suits and in their seats, and they're going to stay in there even after Dragon touches down. We'll still have communication with Dragon. Once they're in the water, it'll stay powered on. Probably most importantly, the air conditioner will continue to work while they're in the capsule in the now Gulf of Mexico, and much warmer temperatures than they've seen for the last couple of months. And we'll still be able to talk to them from here in Hawthorne, and the recovery teams will be able to as well.
Yeah.
One of the things we might see them do, depending on sea states and everything after they touch down and the crew themselves, they'll still have a couple of demonstration tasks potentially to carry out. They have a satellite phone inside of the capsule that has its own satellite antenna integrated into Dragon, and they are able to use that independent of Dragon's communication system. So one thing we might hear them do is do a test call on that to the teams here in Hawthorne. We wouldn't be able to hear the call, but you would hear the go to do it over the Dragon to ground audio that we've been listening to this entire time. So still have a couple of demonstration steps essentially, as again this is a test flight. This is the flight to really prove out Dragon systems, to bring crew members from Kennedy Space Center to the space station and return them safely to Earth. And so far we have had a flawless ride downhill. We've completed the deorbit burn. Dragon is continuing to drop down. It's right now at about 132 miles over the Pacific Ocean. Pretty soon we're going to see its ground track cross over Central America, out over the Gulf, culminating in that splashdown in the Gulf just off the coast of Pensacola.
Dragon SpaceX for entry brief. Okay, Doug, we have no update to timing because the burn went great, and your vehicle is still looking really good for entry. No health issues at this time.
Okay, very good copy, thank you.
In addition, the recovery team is go, and the weather is still great. Winds are about 2 knots and waves about 1 foot. From the ship, they're reporting very calm. How copy?
Copy, good weather in the landing area, thank you.
Okay, and last piece is that we do expect some additional Radicom during entry prep 2 due to vehicle attitude. So if you can get us your entry check report a little bit prior to entry prep 2, we'd appreciate it.
Copy. We'll go.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
So there we just had a bit of a briefing between Mission Control and Bob and Doug up in Crew Endeavour, just confirming with them that the deorbit burn was great and that the timing on their pads doesn't need to be updated. We are able to upload new trajectory calculations, including times that remain live depending on how the burn goes, and at this point in time, those don't need to be updated. It is important that they do remain accurate because Bob and Doug, their primary mission right now is to continue to monitor the vehicle status and telemetry and data being presented to them on their touchscreen displays in front of them. And so during the more dynamic events, they certainly want to be aware when things like parachute deploy will be happening and when splashdown is expected. So making sure that the timeline of events, the sequencing is accurate is certainly important in order for them to stay aware and updated of upcoming events.
Just another quick position check. Dragon still out over the Central Pacific, down to about 108 miles in altitude. And we're expecting that entry interface to come up in the next 4 minutes or so. Again, at that point, Dragon should be at an altitude of right around 62 statute miles, or about 100 kilometers. And that's when it really starts to feel the effects of the atmosphere. It starts to experience the lift and drag and other atmospheric effects it's been free from while flying in the near vacuum of low Earth orbit. So continuing to drop in altitude, still looking for an on-time splashdown. Should just be about 19 minutes from now. And just a reminder, we do have that blackout period coming. So as they continue to dip in the Earth's atmosphere and get lower and lower, the atmosphere gets thicker and thicker and is going to generate more and more heat, eventually heating up the outside of Dragon to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And as it hits that peak heating, it'll also be forming a plasma around the spacecraft, so we do expect to lose comm for about 6 minutes.
Dragon crew entry preps are complete.
SpaceX copies. Entry prep complete. Thank you.
Call from Spacecraft Commander Doug Hurley. Entry preps are complete. So they are on board, they are monitoring, they are ready to come home.
Yeah, and as of right now, entry prep should have also included final configuration of their flight suits. So we had a question from our social media earlier if the visors will be up or down. Those visors should be down at this point as part of that entry prep check. In that last briefing, we also heard that the weather is looking good. In a previous report, the phrasing was, "It looks like glass," and that is certainly ideal for a water splashdown. That being said, the recovery timeline, Bob and Doug should be out of the capsule within an hour after splashing down. So good to hear that the weather is good. We saw blue skies and a couple of white fluffy clouds out there in the Gulf of Mexico as we got views from our recovery vessel Go Navigator. But glad to hear that conditions are sustaining and that winds also are looking really good, around 2.5 miles per hour. So hardly anything at all. Really couldn't ask for better conditions for a splashdown day.
We kind of threaded the needle once again, almost like we did on launch with the weather today. Your upper limits for wind were about 10 miles an hour, so we're well below that threshold for a splashdown today. Dragon coming up on 82 miles in altitude, continuing to dip down. We're expecting that entry interface to start pretty soon.
Ciao ragazzi, sono tornato, mancano esattamente 18 minuti al lancio, ormai 16 minuti, però va abbastanza bene, quindi non mi lamento, io non... no. Allora, guardiamo le notizie. Twitter non dovrebbe essere molto affollato. Non tollera niente. Parlano molto della perseverance. Andiamo qui su SpaceX. SpaceX non saprei allora. Figa, ha 12,3 milioni di follower su Twitter. Non è che abbia followato molto. Adesso sentiamo. Dovrebbero iniziare.
Like we said, we are anticipating a brief blackout period where we're unable to
Collegarsi.
communicate with the capsule. That's we're expecting that to start in exactly 3 minutes. That will last for 6 minutes total, and during that time we will be unable to command the vehicle or receive telemetry. That being said, Dragon is designed to be fully autonomous, so it's driving
Notizie
itself anyway.
principali.
So Bob and Doug will stay fastened in their seats. Like I said, that anticipated loss of signal, or as
Allora,
we hear it called LOS.
beh ragazzi, sono agitato, comunque sono agitato perché
During that blackout period, the capsule
non lo so,
will encounter what's known as entry interface.
non lo so,
This is when the
mi
capsule
dispiace
is
come
now,
va,
really in the
come...
Earth's atmosphere
Amen.
and beginning to be subject to
niente,
aerodynamic
allora
forces. This is also when a lot of that friction
dovrebbero
begins to build
esserci
up
fra un po',
and raise the external
quindi dovrebbe
temperatures.
essere contesto anche adesso.
SpaceX, we show 2 minutes until predicted calm blackout. We will see you on the other side at 1842.
Dragon copy, 1842, we'll talk to you then.
Ah raga, dai, speriamo bene.
So there's that heads up communication from mission control to Dragon and Endeavour.
Allora sono 45 anni che non si effettua un ammaraggio. Con le missioni finali di Apollo non si sono effettuati più ammaraggi. Lo Space Shuttle atterrava normalmente sulle piste d'atterraggio d'aereo, mentre le Soyuz russe atterravano sì con la capsula con il paracadute, ma atterravano sulla terraferma, in particolare sul Kazakistan. E una domanda che mi hanno fatto su Twitter l'altro giorno: perché indossano le tute arancioni? Gli astronauti le indossano per essere più visibili per il recupero. In mare chiaramente sei più visibile, e anche sulla terra sei più visibile se magari nevica o ci sono delle condizioni atmosferiche che lasciano un po' desiderare. Però siamo, dai,
blackout time. So we heard the call, we'll see them on the other side, expected to regain that communication at about 42 minutes after the hour.
tra poco
So for these next 6
stanno
minutes,
entrando comunque dall'atmosfera, quindi non mi...
and this is when the capsule
stanno già entrando nell'atmosfera e li vedremo fra un po' aprire il paracadute. Chiaramente devono passare da una velocità da 17.000 km/h a 350 e poi passare a 16 miglia e chiaramente devono fare la decelerazione che quando entra nell'atmosfera comunque si disintegrano, perché devono pure frenare, quindi è quello lì il momento cruciale dell'atterraggio dello splashdown. Poi quando sono in mare, quando hanno superato l'atmosfera, ci sarà una bella botta, ma io mi ricorderò sempre, e dico sempre le parole che hanno detto, che il momento più bello della missione sarà quando vomiteranno insieme allo splashdown. Questa qui è una parte che mi ha lasciato molto coso e non dico emozionante, però per Dio è bella. Io aspetto, figa, che cambi l'inquadratura. Almeno dai, almeno fai vedere qualche cosa, dai, zi, no, beh, ce la faremo, dai.
Alright, and just about 2 minutes after we get acquisition of signal AOS back with
Fra
Dragon,
poco
we're going to be looking
sarà
for
caduto
those
il deploy,
parachutes,
sono
and we should
sicuro.
hopefully be getting some
Fra 2
feeds from a couple of
minuti
our
sto
assets
guardando
out
un
at the
live
landing
di
zone,
Space Blitz.
including our
Ci sarà.
WB-57 high altitude
Speriamo
research
bene.
flight, which is going to be relying on Dragon's telemetry to
Vedo
actually
Elon
lock
Musk
onto the
davanti
sky,
con
give us an
gli
infrared
ingegni,
view of
non
the
mi
capsule during the
ricordo.
final stages of re-entry.
Comunque
We're going to be
bello.
looking for the drogue deploys at about 44 minutes after the hour. There's going to be 2 drogue shoots. They're going to come out with the vehicle still moving at about 350
raga,
miles an hour. It'll be at an
fra un
altitude
po',
of about
secondo me
18,000 feet.
40,
They'll come out and do some initial
vediamo
slowing
di vedere bene
and stabilization of the
sto
spacecraft.
splashdown.
Less than a minute
E
later, they'll
niente,
detach, and the
detto
4
questo io
main
vi posso
parachutes
salutare,
will
spengo
deploy.
la
You'll see
notte.
them come out and look kind of closed up initially, and then they'll do what's known as reefing, opening up in really 2 different stages just to minimize the immediate loads on the parachutes themselves. Those main parachutes will come out at an altitude of about 6,500 feet, with Dragon already slowed down to 119 miles an hour, and they'll do the rest of the slowing the whole way down.
Raga, dai,
until we
dai,
splash down
dai.
Mexico. We should be 10 minutes away from
Raga,
splashdown.
quando hai 10 minutes mi è venuto un brivido che parte dal dito in fondo a sopra, cioè una roba veramente.
So right now we're getting
Molto
our cameras on the
emozionante.
WB-57 airplane, which is in the area, getting those cameras ready to give us our first glimpse.
Speriamo bene. Mancano esattamente 9 minuti e 20 secondi allo splashdown. Diciamo che passare da 17.000 km/h a 350 è molto difficile.
Until we anticipate reacquiring
Speriamo
our signal,
che superino la
connection with
parte.
Dragon spacecraft.
Go NASA, go SpaceX,
If
go
you're
Bob
just
and
tuning
Doug.
in, we are in a blackout period that we were
Il resto c'è da
expecting.
aspettare.
This blackout period will last a total of 6 minutes, and we're about halfway through there now. At the moment, Dragon is re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and due to the plasma building up on the exterior of the vehicle, we're unable to communicate or send commands, but Dragon is fully autonomous. It is steering itself. And right now, Bob
Non
and
farò
Doug are
nessun
flying
video
home.
per YouTube, ma resterà la live, quindi non ci faccio un video particolare, ci sarà la live e basta, appunto ci lascio solo la live. Dopo del resto è not very interesting. Tanto sono agitato, cazzo. 8 fottuti minuti e poi ancora 20 minuti di live.
Your Dragon SpaceX com check.
Raga, rispondete, vi prego.
We're still inside that anticipated blackout window. It does look like we are
Magari si
getting
vede da qui, non
maybe
penso
some
che in Sardegna
sporadic
si
data
vede.
starting to peek through.
Si mi
This is
vede
why you
la
heard
parte
that
coperta.
communications check with the spacecraft.
Raga.
Dragon SpaceX com check.
Speriamo per il segnale.
Denver has your last clear. We're about 3.9.
Copy, we've got you 5x5 as well, Doug. Looking good, and you can expect an automated chute deployment.
7 minuti, cazzo.
Copy. 3.5.
7 minutes to
All right,
splash
really
down
good news
with
there. We have come out of
the
the
third
blackout
Dragon
period.
Endeavour.
We have reestablished connection with
in English.
Dragon Endeavour with NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley on board.
We were able to reacquire that communication a little bit earlier than expected, and now we are just waiting. We should just be about 2.5 minutes
Io raga figa,
away
non so
from
perché non
initial
faccio vedere le
chute
immagini.
deploy.
Yeah, 2 minutes and 26 seconds.
Ok,
Your
quindi
GPS has converged.
dell'atmosfera.
Copy that.
You may have heard earlier that Bob and Doug are currently experiencing 3.5 Gs. Not too bad, that's about what they pulled during the ascent phase.
Dai raga,
It's
dai
like a
raga, dai
mild
raga.
roller coaster.
I'm so excited. Dico al lancio,
Vehicle is
si sei
now
agitato,
over
ma
the
dopo 2
Gulf of
minuti,
Mexico.
quando ti
It
supera
is
l'atmosfera,
the
è
landing
a
zone
posto.
off the
Sì,
coast
sì.
of Florida near Pensacola.
Ecco
And there we have our
ecco.
first shot.
Piove di mezzo.
There it is, this
Raga, abbiamo
first
l'immagine,
view
dai.
of the
Abbiamo
WB-57
l'immagine,
airplane.
ragazzi. Abbiamo l'immagine.
It is dipping in and out a little bit. This is going to be
Abbiamo
an
le
infrared
immagini.
camera showing us Dragon re-entering. Have that com back with Bob and Doug. You heard 8 GPS is converging. Dragon has 3 GPS units that it uses actually in the parachute deployment process as it helps along with the pressure sensors really give a solid altitude to the flight computers on where these are
18.42,
supposed to
sono le
deploy.
8.42 ragazzi, dai. Dai.
Standing
Dai.
by for the drogue chute deployments. We should be just under 5 minutes away from Splashdown.
Passing 15 kilometers, brace for drogue window.
Captain, we're ready.
About 14 kilometers in altitude, 8.4 miles, continuing to descend.
Ho detto ci sarà di notte lo splashdown, cazzo dormo, mi sveglio la mattina, leggo le notizie. Non sai questo orario, già fra 2 minuti devo dare il calcio. Poi adesso sembra una capsula. Molto belle queste risoluzioni di immagini, comunque si bloccano. Almeno 5 minuti abbiamo iniziato. Agitazione. Avrò un orgasmo come col decollo, col lancio.
Decelerating quickly.
Standing by for drogue deploys.
Dai. Che va veloce.
Visual, 2 drogues out.
Sì, ma sto qui.
There on your screen we have visual confirmation of
No,
those
no.
2 drogue deployments.
I cosi.
Alright, so
Hanno aperto i paracaduti.
drogues now out. They're going to do their slowing
Paracaduti
and
aperti, raga.
stabilizing of the Dragon spacecraft. They should be detaching in just a few
Ok.
moments. And then we'll
Allargati.
see 4 parachutes, the main parachutes deployed. Dragon under drogues.
Moselle.
Drogue descent rate nominal.
Dai raga, dai. La parte cosa dovrebbe essere andata.
The expected descent rate, the expected
Atmosfera
velocity
abbiamo
on the
superato.
drogues nominal. We're
Poi
right around 150 miles
quando
an
vedrò
hour
che
and
si
already
ficcherà
dropping.
dell'acqua.
See
Che
the
emozione.
drogues now detach.
There we have confirmation of deployment of the 4 main parachutes.
Ok raga,
We are
dai.
visual on 4 shoots out.
We are visual. 4 main parachutes deployed.
Un main parachute. Let's go, dai. 4. 3 minuti. Più lunghi della loro vita, della mia vita, della vita di tutti quelli
So at this
appassionati.
point, the main parachutes have deployed. They are inflating, as you can see there on your screen, continuing to slow Dragon down significantly. We are anticipating splashdown in just under 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Non mi devo commuovere.
It's already slowed the vehicle down to about 16 miles an hour. It's already less than a kilometer in altitude.
Almeno lo solito figa se avrei la telecamera dentro, più figo. Qui no. Cioè qui c'è ma non la mettono, quindi non so.
Main chute descent rate nominal. Passing through 700 meters.
700 metri raga. Atmosfera chiaramente superata, quindi
So at this point, Dragon has saved all propulsion systems on board,
600 meters.
2 minutes.
600 meters.
and we're 600 meters
600 metri.
above the Gulf of Mexico.
Dai raga. Atmosfera superata chiaramente.
Approximately a minute 30 from
100 metri, dai raga.
splashdown.
600 fottuti metri.
Mission control team here in Hawthorne has reported the precise landing coordinates to the recovery team. They are standing by
600
ready
metri.
to go get our space dads.
Cosa è stato il paro? Ragazzi, un minuto e mezzo. Cazzo, dic. Raga. Un minuto, raga, un minuto.
Just passed about 300 meters. 1 minute
300
till
metri.
splashdown.
300 metri allo splashdown, raga. 300 metri. Sta andando piano comunque. Perfetto, raga, l'ho fatta. Non vorrei fare.
Brace for splashdown.
Però ormai possiamo dirlo.
Copy, brace for splashdown.
So there we heard Bob and Doug reporting that they are bracing for splashdown. Should be able to see the Gulf of Mexico here in the shot just momentarily,
Oh, Mexico.
as we're now just about 20 meters off the ocean.
Raga, dai. Sì.
Splashdown.
As you can see on your screen, we have visual confirmation
Vai,
for
raga.
splashdown.
SpaceX copies and concurs. We see splashdown and mains cut.
Dragon Endeavour has returned home. NASA astronauts Bob
Che
and
cazzo sono le
Doug
parole che voglio
SpaceX and
sentire?
NASA teams,
Ce l'abbiamo
welcome
fatta,
back to
ragazzi.
planet Earth.
Dopo
Thanks
2
for
mesi, dopo 2 live abbastanza impegnative ce l'abbiamo fatta. Dai, raga. Cazzo, adesso voglio riuscire.
It was truly our honor and privilege to flight surfing Crew Dragon and Endeavour Cruise. Everybody has all good.
Raga, dai.
Into section of 4.800.
Io
Thanks for those words, Doug, and we copy that you are into
non voglio dire.
4.800.
Dai, raga.
So great news all around there. Our space dads are back on Earth after a 19-hour return journey from space. Dragon Endeavour has splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico, just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. And on your screen there, you can see
Quanto
our
cazzo
two
ci
fast
mettono ad
boats,
arrivare,
and they
dai.
are indeed fast.
Dai.
Racing out to greet Dragon Endeavour as it sits there. The first on there we can see a view inside the capsule.
Eccoli.
Bob and Doug looking good. Although the communication was a
Eccoli.
little choppy, we did hear
Eccoli, dai, raga, dai.
3.1.
Eccoli.
We show ourselves as stable 1.
Eccoli, dai.
SpaceX copies for vehicle assessment step 3.1, stable 1. Good news.
Good, guys.
Stable 1, essentially. They're
Right.
upright in the water. Stable 2. Also, another potential where it could be on its side or even upside down. The Dragon does have a water ballast system to keep it upright, where it's able to essentially pump seawater into bladders in the service section of the capsule. But they're upright. We already see the fast boats approaching. They touched down, came right on time at 11:48 a.m. Pacific, 1848 UTC. Bob and Doug now in the water, and the recovery ops they've already
Zitto
begun.
perché sennò mi
We already
corro.
see the
Cazzo,
fast
non l'ho
boats starting to
cambiato.
move in.
Boh,
We're still
vabbè.
maintaining that good communication back with Bob and Doug and the team here in Hawthorne.
Certo.
Pretty soon we should be
E quelli del NASA,
on the go
che
for
servono
them
la
to move
telecamera.
in, begin their hypergolf
Dai,
steps,
dai.
and begin wrangling up those parachutes.
Eccoli i
so we
nostri
can see
amori.
Bob and Doug
Bravi, siete
inside
tornati.
the capsule, back on planet Earth.
Yeah, those fast boats will be moving in to do a couple of things. They'll be performing what's known as a sniffer test. That's essentially to ensure that the air around the vehicle doesn't have any toxic fumes from the hypergolic propellants
Dai,
on board. So once we get the all clear from there, the water recovery lead will give the go for approach, and that's when the first fast boat will actually approach the capsule. Hopefully give a little wave to Bob and Doug through the window, and one of the crew members will, one of the team members will actually
Perfetto, guys, dai,
climb
raga.
on top of Crew Dragon and begin to place the rigging equipment necessary to hoist Dragon out of the water.
Oh, still getting a view from the WB. The airplane flying over.
Peccato che si vede un po' male questa immagine, però del resto sarebbe molto bello. Molto bello.
From up above, you can see the 4 parachutes.
Se andassero meno navi più telecamere,
Those were cut automatically.
sarebbe anche bello,
By Dragon.
sinceramente.
So for now, the crew just standing by. Again, they're going to stay in their suits, in their seats. We're waiting for all these initial checks.
Dragon SpaceX comm check.
Avranno vomitato.
Loud and clear as well. Just wanted to verify a quick comm reconfiguration. Thank you.
So essentially what just happened there is they reconfigured.
So if you could just relay the status of the fast boats and the recovery as you get them, we would appreciate it.
You bet. Absolutely, Doug. Wilco.
So what just happened there, you heard comms reconfiguration. That's a vehicle down. Even team, so that if not, they can hear feedback from Bob and Doug directly as well. Now, we talked a little bit about
SpaceX Endeavour, you can let Ben and James know we're doing pretty good so far.
Okay, we'll let the flight docs know that you're feeling good so far. Thanks for that update.
really good news there to hear that they're feeling good, and they can let the flight surgeons know that all is well inside Dragon Endeavour.
Alright, and it sounds like we do have one of our folks that's on location there with the recovery forces, NASA's Brandy Dean.
Che bello dare il nome Endeavour
Joining us by satellite phone.
Nello shuttle.
I mean, what is it like right there in the water? What is it like to watch them splash down?
Test of the exit. Stand by at the console. Get it up and operating.
Okay, SpaceX copies. We'll be ready for that in just a couple minutes. We should have the go for you in just a moment. Please stand by.
Ok, dai.
I think you're using perfect.
What's up, what the fuck? Man. Sei il figlio? No, non so, scherzo. Qualcuno dovrebbe... dai, chi è? Allora ce la fanno di andare a recuperare, adesso si avvia nuoto. Fratelli, ci diamo una scantata. Comunque veramente Splashdown è venuto molto bene.
Inside the capsule, Bob.
Ecco, rivediamo
We
qui.
are anticipating splashdown in just under 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Already slowed the vehicle down
Vediamo
to
qui,
about 60
tanto
miles an hour. It's already less
lo
than a
splashdown.
kilometer in altitude.
Rivediamolo, guardiamo la risoluzione. Ok, dai.
We are anticipating. So there we heard Bob and Doug
Ok,
reporting that
dai
they're
ragazzi, siamo dai.
bracing for splashdown.
Dai. Dai, let's go.
Should be able to see.
Qui stiamo vedendo le immagini dello splashdown intanto.
Shot just momentarily, as we're now just about 20 meters off the ocean.
Ma intanto guardiamo un attimo l'immagine, scusate che devo cambiarlo.
Traces of hypergulls. The second one is going to start rounding up the parachutes, which we're getting some really cool views.
I nonnetti col motoscafo sono andati. I nonnetti col motoscafo. Ora dobbiamo solo cercare voglio dare le loro facce. Grazie ambulanza per passare quando sono in live.
Amazing. I wish everybody could have had my view. It was such beautiful sunny. It was a gorgeous day. The water is calm. Really the best weather we could have asked for. And we heard the sonic boom as it made its way back.
Una domanda, ma se vomitano, cioè, la domanda la faccio così. Se vomitano nel casco, che schifo. Vabbè, non pensiamoci. Comunque i caschi sono piccoli, Non è i film dei Martian, Alien, alcuni Gravity, hanno dei casconi della Madonna. È per far vedere chiaramente la faccia dell'attore, chiaramente. Non è la faccia, cioè... come nella realtà. Sono piccoli. Molto piccoli. E quindi... se si vomiti dentro, vabbè. Let's go, guys.
we're not getting any views on the boat, so what kind of activity is taking place right now? We're able to see the fast boats approaching the capsule. What's everybody doing on the boat to just kind of get everything ready?
The boat's also making its way for the capsule. I can't see it with time here. Yeah, we're getting closer.
Vai, vantaggio del Parma.
Ready position for quite a while now, so as soon as the splashdown gets pulled in, they're working on their own activities.
All right, copy that. Well, we're going to keep watching from here. Thanks for calling in, and thanks for being out there with everybody and getting us these great views. It's really incredible. Thanks, Brandy. Hope to get you back in port soon. And we'll talk to you back in Houston.
So there on your screen, camera view change. That is a view coming to us from Go Navigator, the recovery vessel. The two fast boats are out there getting ready to
Ok, scusate.
excuse me.
Notizie dalla regia, adesso andrà dentro un medico, se non è andato. E mi tra collegare fra tutti gli esami medici e se tutto va bene, però Android sarà fuori, quindi andrei ancora per appunto Android si dovrebbero essere fuori dalla capsula, appunto.
That particular team member is highly experienced and highly trained. As you can imagine, climbing on top of an oddly shaped thing in, the ocean could be a little tricky. So this person has undergone hours and hours of training and certification in order to perform this very important task. There on the right-hand side of your screen, we see the second. Of course, both of these boats needed to wait for their cue from the water recovery lead in order to approach Dragon after splashdown. Again, that was just to make sure that there weren't any toxic vapors in the air. And now that they got the all clear, we do see them beginning to work on and around the Dragon capsule. So even though the camera's a little shaky, that water looks super, super duper smooth, almost like glass, which is certainly ideal for a water recovery like today.
Yeah, gotta remember that this is a view from the main recovery vessel, which was still a few miles away from the splashdown
Dragon
point.
SpaceX, we have hypergirl sweeps and unfired ordnance checks nominal. Rig is on board the vehicle. About 5 minutes until capsule lift.
Cazzo, mi fate vedere la telecamera da dentro? Adesso ci saranno circa 3 mesi, no, 3 mesi no, però forse anche di più, però 3 mesi per la riabilitazione, sì. Raga.
So the team was able to approach, and now the crew member that is installing the rigging is on top of the capsule. It's difficult to see there because the slower vessel, the primary recovery ship, is a little further away. But as we heard, it's just a mere 2.5 minutes until they will be hoisted out of the water. I'm sorry, 25 minutes, not 2.5. I misheard that.
Yeah.
25,
They're
ok.
fast, but they're not that fast.
25
We
minuti,
also
va
have been
bene.
hearing that the secondary boat,
Dico, mi
which
apprezzi,
its
mi dice
primary
bene.
mission in this case is securing those parachutes. They've already got buoys attached to both drogues, and we also have been hearing that the secondary boat getting those parachutes together. The drogues detaching from the spacecraft right before the deployment of the mains automatically detaching immediately as Dragon detected splashdown. All of that happening right near the timeline.
And we've talked a little bit about the hardwired buttons that Bob and Doug have on their seats and in their control displays, and cutting the main chutes is one of those buttons. In the event that they weren't automatically cut after splashdown, Bob and Doug would have had the ability to do so. If the winds were stronger and they caught the parachutes, it could certainly create a condition where the capsule could be moved unintentionally by those dragging parachutes. So definitely want to avoid that. So that's one of the few buttons that are hardwired into the cabin for the crew.
Intanto ragazzi ci sarà anche il volo, mi sono scordato, ma proprio è una cazzata amatoriale ragazzi dello Starship. La live dello Starship del lancio di prova, quindi diciamo che sì,
The main recovery vessel to go Navigator to reach
Starship
Dragon. By that point, all the rigging will be affixed, and then they'll be
non
able
so
to
quando ci sarà, però comunque lo
hydraulic lift
proveranno.
on the back of the vessel.
Molto bene.
And to pull Dragon up out of the water.
Comunque è 3 2020 4 dovremmo essere pronti a mandare sulla Luna sicuramente, e poi anche su Marte si spera. Comunque poi io non so che robe abbiano da fare. Speriamo bene.
And so if you
No,
think back to when we saw Bob and Doug while they
qui la
were still
capsula.
on orbit and during the deorbit burn and all their departure burns, they were actually laying closer to on their backs at the 40-degree position, where essentially they were looking up at the top of Dragon capsule, like their stomachs were facing the top nose cone there. At this point, the seats would have rotated, so they're in a little bit more of an upright position. That's done to ensure that the loads experienced from landing are, doesn't hurt them. So at this point, they are not really laying on their backs in the ocean. They are seated upright a little bit, which would allow them to have a better view of the team working to install the rigging equipment. So at this point, we're at about 22 minutes until Dragon will be lifted onto the recovery vessel.
Sì, ora sulle barche che si avvicinano, quindi dai raga, dai.
Bob and Doug are still strapped into their seats.
Ok,
kind of like an airplane. They say, do not unbuckle your seatbelt until the captain determines that it's safe to do so. They will remain in their seats throughout the entire recovery process, essentially until it's time to get them out.
Na. Guardiamo la NASA.
Like I said, we are expecting to lift Dragon onto the Go Navigator recovery ship in about 21 minutes. And then in 28 minutes, we will be opening that hatch.
Okay.
And beginning crew egress, also known as exit.
And we did hear the rigging is pretty much complete, so right as they arrive there at the capsule, the main recovery vessel will be able to begin getting it up out of the water.
So now as the recovery vessel Go Navigator is getting closer to Dragon's position there off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, we're able to see the capsule in a little bit more detail. It is certainly no longer a bright shade of white. Like we said, those external temperatures were reaching up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So the thermal protection systems enable Dragon to return while keeping the internal temperature rather temperate.
You are seeing a few more boats than expected. The team's currently working with a few private vessels in the area, making sure that they get out of there.
Ok, dai, la capsula la vedo abbastanza, quindi dovrebbe esserci. Sì. Aspettiamo conferme ulteriori del Messico. E niente, speriamo bene. No, speriamo bene, speriamo bene. Poi bisogna vedere dalla parte di riabilitazione, però tutto è finito, tutto è andato a buon fine, non c'è più niente da temere. E niente, con NASA, con SpaceX sempre. Niente.
And now we see one of the SpaceX fast boats moving in.
Dai, dai, dai. Dai, raga, dai.
So we are being advised that the recovery team is radioing out to the vessels in the water near Crew Dragon to vacate the area
Quindi immagine
so that
più
we're able to extract Bob and Doug
zoomata,
safely.
chiaramente.
You know, also for the safety of those folks in the area as well, not just Bob and Doug.
Yeah, this is obviously a
Io vorrei
dynamic
vedere anche
operation. One of the first things we do is
Dai,
make sure
vorrei
there
vedere anche
aren't
l'immagine dentro.
essentially poisonous fumes around the capsule, so something like this just really can endanger the whole thing, endanger the crew members and endanger themselves. So the SpaceX team is moving in to try and get them away so they can safely recover the Dragon capsule and get Bob and Doug on deck and safely inside their medical quarters. So we can see that they're getting a lot closer. We expect about 10 minutes or so until they should be in position. All the rigging has been fixed on the Dragon capsule, and once they arrive, they'll be able to use that hydraulic lift to get Dragon up and out of the water.
So the recovery vessel Go Navigator is getting closer and closer to Dragon Endeavour as it awaits its recovery, or as it awaits to be hoisted out of the Gulf
Non
of Mexico.
passate davanti, qualunque cosa sia, dai.
Near
Che
Pensacola.
cazzo di roba è che è passata? No, io adesso vorrei
Maybe next
sapere.
time we shouldn't announce our landing
Sì,
zone.
sarà il loro che l'elicottero.
Oh, there we got a shot from our WB-57
Comunque bello
plane. It looks like
l'elicottero.
that area has cleared out significantly.
Penso sia
So
un
that is good to
elicottero.
see.
Meno che non sia un mini drone, è un elicottero.
And we're also hearing that all of the parachutes have buoys on them, so also good news as the recovery process continues for SpaceX Demo 2.
Dai, dai, dai.
Dragon SpaceX for comm reconfig.
Vediamo se sono vivi.
Hey Doug, we're about to reconfigure the forward link. We may lose that for
Dai, dai, va
one or so
bene,
minutes.
va bene, va
That should
bene.
happen shortly.
Copy. Yes, let's give us a call back when you think we got it back.
Will do.
Tanto sono le 9:10, quindi non va malissimo.
So as the main vessel gets closer, it's going to back up and get its hydraulic lift set up right next to the Dragon capsule, still in the water. Bob and Doug still inside, just waiting for that recovery. We should start the hoisting operation in the
2-0
next 10
Parma.
to 15 minutes.
2-0, dai.
And then it'll be a pretty quick lift up out of the water using that hydraulic lift into the Dragon nest on the deck of the boat, or the ship rather. And then they'll move it underneath the helipad into essentially the crew recovery area, where they'll have a platform right up to the hatch. They'll be able to open up the hatch. The SpaceX medical doctor will be the first one through the door, able to do a quick check-in with Bob and Doug on their status, and then he and the other medical doctors, flight surgeons, and trained technicians will begin to help them out of the capsule.
Yeah, earlier just after splashdown, we did hear Bob and Doug report that they were feeling good after re-entry, so that was relayed to the flight surgeon, and good news to hear. Again, this is a view coming from the WB-57 plane as it is circling the area, and we can see Dragon awaiting to be pulled out of the water. Again, we are anticipating that lift to begin in just under 15 minutes. We're approaching 14 minutes here. And then in 21 minutes, we will have an open hatch.
You can see the main recovery vessel at the top right there. That's the helipad with the big SpaceX X on top. It's now backing up towards the capsule.
Certainly not to be confused with one of our landing drone ships. There's a live
Ok,
view
ecco, dai.
of
Ok, dai.
Dragon,
Un'immagine meno più
Dragon floating in
decente.
the water there in the
Sto cercando
background,
su Twitter
along
se
with
si danno
many onlookers.
notizie, ma
Certainly from a safer distance at this point. This is a live shot coming from Go Navigator, our
no, raga,
primary
metto
recovery
tutto là.
vessel here. So its Crew Dragon is also accompanied by the fast boats that are helping to bring it in closer. And there you can see a couple of the recovery team members on the deck. And also just behind them, we get our first good view of the nest. Yes, so this is essentially the nest in the background there. Dragon will be hoisted using the hydraulic lift out of the water and into that nest. That nest will then be pulled towards the camera from this view, towards those individuals on that upper deck there. And that's where the
Dragon SpaceX comm check.
Loud and clear, solo, how else?
Loud and clear as well, and from the video, it looks like the boat is about one length away, about 5 to 10
Dai,
meters,
santo.
backing up to you.
Copy that, thanks for the update.
Alright, so good news there. We're getting ready to see Dragon to be lifted out of the water and into the recovery nest. As I was saying, that nest will be pulled towards the camera, towards that upper deck that we saw there, and that's where the medical stretchers will be waiting to assist them into the medical bays for evaluation after capsule egress.
Comunque devi avere una pazienza per fare l'astronauta.
It's already
Dopo
been 25 minutes since they
parte
splashed
tutto.
down. It doesn't feel like it,
That
but
was definitely the fastest 25
Yeah.
Sono
minutes
20 ore che sei dentro, devi avere della pazienza, del coraggio, ma di coraggio sì, abbastanza.
about 30 minutes, so
Sangue
we're pretty much right
freddo.
on the timeline still. That's been a pretty common thing so far today. You can see them with one of the fast boats getting in position to start moving out with the additional rigging to affix to the Dragon capsule, where they're going to use this A-frame to pull it up out of the water. You can see the Dragon nest at the very bottom. It's that circular object with the A1 right on it.
So while this is the first time we are recovering a capsule with crew members on board,
Dai.
the recovery team has been...
And Dragon, just letting you know, we got a couple lines connected and rigging is in progress.
Ok, dai. Sto avvicinando. Speriamo.
Alright there, so just updating the crew that they might feel
Dio
some
caro. Diciamo
momentum
che i
as the
russi
lines, as a couple of the rigging lines
piano,
are
come si dice.
attached.
Li prendono,
There's our first good
li
shot.
portano via subito, non...
Is,
Sì, qui
placing
si
that
mette già
rigging
un po' di più, però, dai.
equipment. Again, that's
Stava
someone
bene.
that's highly specialized and very well trained for these
Dai.
operations. As I was saying, the recovery team has rehearsed and practiced this with Bob and Doug themselves, actually, in a test capsule, practicing the egress, as well as they have practiced the recovery process many times. And actually, through those practice runs, they have effectively cut the recovery period in half from the initial Demo 1 mission. So it's really nice to see that the process itself, after being rehearsed and carefully choreographed, is going super efficiently. Again, safety is the #1 priority, so making sure that only personnel involved in active recovery operations are present on the deck. You may have heard us mention before that there are about 40 people on board today, but we certainly don't want anyone in danger or to fall overboard. That guy intentionally jumped. Speaking of falling overboard.
We're ready, thank you. Alright, so the crew was just told in the next 30 seconds, they have the lines affixed, so they're going to start lifting the capsule up out of the water. And at this point, the communication we're getting with Dragon is actually being routed through the boat itself at this point. So there we can see the lift.
Stanno caricando come se non
Dragon
fosse
is
cosa, però
out
figa.
of the
Quando
water.
figa
Yeah,
attaccano.
A-frame's gonna start swinging it back.
Io
And
caro,
it's
di
bound right for
figa
that nest
bello.
at the bottom of your screen.
Allora, intanto siamo... Ok.
There we're getting a better shot of all the points in which Dragon is tethered to the hydraulic lift, ensuring that it isn't swinging freely.
Ragazzi, attaccatela. Raga, non ce la faccio più aspettare. Che lo attacchino. Che ce la faccio? Ah, dai.
There we can see Dragon Endeavour being carefully set down into the recovery nest on top of Go.
Ma raga, dai.
Dragon SpaceX, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks and preparing to translate you to the egress platform.
Happy, thank you.
Thank you, grande ragazzi, sono
For the
felice.
first time in 2 months,
Tutti felici e
NASA
quindi possiamo dire
astronauts Bob
ufficialmente adesso
Behnken
sulla
and
barca.
Bob Hurley are on
Dopo
some sort of ground.
45
We can't call it solid ground
anni
because it is a ship.
ce l'abbiamo
However,
fatta.
it is the first time that they are not in space, on a rocket, or bobbing in the ocean.
So now that they're in the nest, they're gonna start translating forward.
Fate il Covid.
Dragon's gonna move into essentially the
E
hangar
no.
section underneath that
Con
helipad,
5 anni veramente ce
and then
l'abbiamo
up to that
fatta
recovery
e...
platform that we saw a little bit earlier.
Splashdown, Elon Musk è la prima missione, andiamo altre missioni, mi raccomando seguitemi anche con Lancia Arianna che questi francesi cazzific. Guarda, lo fanno partire, grandi francesi, dell'ESA che collabora con European Space Agency, quindi c'è anche l'Italia, e volevo ricordarvi che i sedili della Crew Dragon sono fatti alla Dallara di Parma, non di Parma però di vicino, di Varano, quindi già che sono fatti dalla Dallara va bene. E niente, bellissima vita quella da astronauta. Che cazzo guadagna però? Guadagnare guadagno. Poi dopo no.
Actually move the recovery nest into closer to the interior of the ship. It'll actually be
Ho messo in chat il coso dell'area perché mi sono salito al paracalcio dall'anno prossimo, quindi
looking straight out from
let's go
the
guys.
center of the boat. So once Dragon is secured in the nest will be translated then forward and closer to the recovery, closer to the position in which we're able to actually open the hatch. So while Dragon is on board safely, we're not able to do that just yet.
Yeah, they're working to detach some of those lines that were used to hoist it using the A-frame, and
stavo pensando prima che
they should be done with that
quando
in just a
atterravano
moment,
passano
and then
squalo,
start that translation.
figa il megalodonte, tira giù il barchino. Quelli lì cazzo si salvano perché adesso lì dentro, però sì. Minchia. Però dai. Detta così adesso aspettiamo che li tirano fuori. Aspettiamo.
So right now we can see the recovery team releasing those
Recovery team.
securing lines that were used during the lift of the capsule from the water into the nest. So they are releasing those securing lines
Comunque
from the
poveretti
sides,
possono
making
caricarli,
sure
per io
it
almeno
is
farli un po'.
secure from the
Non
bottom.
dico camminare perché non possono. Però farli dai. Dai, ecco, cambiate inquadratura ancora.
And there we see Dragon moving forward.
Look at that. Smooth as a Tesla, I would say. It's really interesting to see those scorching marks now that we get a really nice up-close detail shot of Dragon.
Ok raga, dai.
Standing by for the go for side hatch open.
Dovrebbero aprire
That rounded
da un
square
momento
there
all'altro.
in the center of the capsule is that side hatch, and on either side are those oval windows.
Dragon SpaceX, stand by for side hatch opening and egress.
Beh, raga, ingressateci, dai. Let's go, guys,
Crew got
dai.
the call. We are go for hatch open.
Quelli col casco. Perché il casco? Cioè, adesso... Chiaramente va messo, mettete il casco per andare in bici. Usatelo, però dico, per stare lì ad aprire quella roba di casco, dai. Adò, sembra facendo la gara per aprire, oh.
If you look closely immediately
Oh,
above the
figa.
hatch, you can see the
Sto
area
facendo la gara per
where we're
aprirlo.
now. That's where those drogue chutes
Fratelli.
deployed from. The two circles on either side were where the mortars were. The main parachutes now hidden by the platform underneath the side hatch.
Dai, raga, dai.
The crew is in the process of removing the side hatch. We can
Ok,
see
dai.
that Go Navigator is in transit. It is making its way back to the Pensacola Naval Air Station. However, Bob and Doug will get a ride from the recovery vessel via helicopter.
Ok, li recuperano. Li portano via li recuperano e li portano via elicottero. Da quello che ho capito dal mio inglese. Figa, è migliorata la qualità? No, I don't credo. Ora si apre questa porta qui che devo andare a dormire. No, a dormire no, però in modo
So
di
again, we're
dire, dai.
preparing to open the side hatch, and once that is done, the flight surgeon will pop his head in, do an initial check, see how Bob and Doug are
Dai.
doing.
Dragon SpaceX, we got a slight delay due to some potential NDO hits near the side hatch.
Captain Mike, we're standing by.
Ok. Dai raga, fra un po'
And so they're
apriamo.
still continuing to do kind of those sniffs, so checking for any vapors or anything. So those NDO, it's NO2, nitrogen dioxide.
Adesso siamo un'ora e mezza di
Primarily
streaming.
can get detected in the air from the burning of fuel. So they're going to continue to just inspect around the capsule, make sure that it's, again, safe for the crew, safe for the recovery experts before they get this hatch open. And again, moving right along the timeline, it's since they splashed down at 11:48 a.m. Pacific. So again, they're just pausing the operations for a moment, doing some additional air sampling around the prop system. We still have telemetry being fed from the vehicle, so flight controllers here in Hawthorne able to monitor prop tanks, propulsion tank pressures, and not seeing any issues with those at the moment.
Allora dai, niente. Aspettiamo, attendiamo solo l'apertura della capsula da parte di sto personale di buono, insomma, di sti 7 sfigatini qui che non sa neanche muovere via una scala,
So
che gli ha
again,
dato
just
nel
a
culo e
short
gliel'ha dato.
pause in the operations as again they're just sniffing around the capsule, making sure we don't have any readings that might indicate a fuel leak or anything around the vehicle. They did detect some NDO, some nitrogen dioxide, which is typically a residue that arises from the burning of fuel. So they're continuing to do just a couple of different air readings, grab samples essentially, before they proceed with the hatch opening.
Ok. Ok raga, dai, apriamo. Ehi, c'è qualcuno? Adesso. Secondo me ragazzi adesso guardate se ci sono.
Dragon SpaceX update. We're still investigating. Looks like we'll be setting up a service section purge. We're working on a ETA for you.
Dai, imprenditoriali, sfigatelli, vitelli sfigatelli. Ok raga dai. Sempre se riesci a entrare
If you're just
le
joining
comiche, dai.
us, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley have safely returned from the International Space Station. They made an on-time splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico, just off the coast of Pensacola.
Che cazzo ho fatto? Ok,
Universal time,
cazzo.
and they have been pulled out of the water and hoisted onto the recovery vessel Go
Ogni tanto
Navigator.
schiaccio di taste che
And
non a
right now the
caso.
team
È che
is
sono iperattivo di merda.
just completing, they did an initial check and found that there might be some remnant vapors, which we certainly don't want to be around when we have Bob and Doug coming out of the capsule. So the team is working to purge the service section in preparation for crew egress. Just a little commentary on the hatches that we've been talking about. So while Dragon's top hatch is used to connect to the International Space Station, that's the one that's located under the nose cone, which is currently hidden there at the top of the capsule. This is the side hatch is what is utilized for ingress and egress, both on the launch pad as well as coming up here on the recovery vessel. When the when the capsule is docked to the International Space Station, they will use the forward hatch to exit and enter the capsule.
Stanno aprendo.
Something to note that once that side hatch is opened, it'll be the first time that Bob and Doug have gotten a breath of fresh air. The first time that they've been able to do so in 2 months since they boarded the Falcon 9 at the start of their mission back on May 30th.
Dai.
Yeah, with an on-time splashdown, they returned with almost exactly 64 days in space on this mission, just a few minutes shy of that. So I know they're looking forward to it. At minimum, in a little bit more of a stable condition now that they're on the boat, not in the water. But again, our team's just continuing to step through. They're reporting that they're seeing all of the vapor levels that they initially detected have been dropping, and that service section purge.
Dragon SpaceX. We show that levels are declining, but are continuing with purge.
Dai.
And in addition, just so you know, we are not seeing any, leak indications or anything like that. These are pretty small levels, but we still need to do the purge at this time.
Okay, copy. Yeah, you're reading on my mic. We were just wondering if you saw any indications of leak
Dai.
pressurization somewhere. But it sounds like it's just part of the deal.
Speriamo almeno siano preparati nell'accoglierli, abbiano poltrone belle come quelle dei russi e abbiano, speriamo quello lì. Dai. Figa, in questa live sto dicendo solo speriamo che almeno no cazzo sì, non lo speriamo perché non spero un cazzo, non spero.
So we're just continuing to get a view down right at the hatch of the capsule. They are detecting those very small traces of a couple of the hypergulls. The one we've heard specifically mentioned was Endeavour or NO3 nitrogen or NO2 nitrogen dioxide. They are at very low levels, obviously not at a very harmful level as we still have people in close proximity to the capsule.
Dai.
They are going through the purge. They're not
Comunque
seeing any
Dio santo, figa,
indications of a
quelli della
leak
Soyuz
in the service section of Dragon.
li tirano fuori subito, sì vabbè questo è uno splashdown, però dai,
with the
tirano
hypergulls are
fuori,
located inside the capsule.
tirano fuori. Boh, dai, io non so niente. spettatori attuali, mi raccomando ragazzi, scrivete in chat per farvi vedere, che così posso salutare, vi posso.
And we are just about 44 minutes post splashdown. Actually still ahead of the timeline, as we weren't expecting to get the hatch open
44 minuti
before 60
veramente.
minutes, which one would be bringing Bob and Doug out. So this service section.
SpaceX, another update. The service section purge should begin in a bit under 5 minutes. Right now we're showing NTO about 2x of our personnel exposure limits, and we're hoping once we start the purge it'll drop down for us.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Ok, dai raga, ormai ci siamo, dai.
And I'm going to have to correct myself. So it's NTO, that's the dinitrogen tetraoxide, and that's one of the hypergolic fuels used inside Dragon for powering those Draco thrusters.
Dai, Dio.
So again, the SpaceX engineers detecting levels of NTO.
Per caso si mette le cuffie non lo so
Dinitrogen
sinceramente.
tetraoxide. It's one of the hypergolic fuels used inside the Dragon spacecraft. Levels higher than they would like, so they're essentially doing a purge to help dissipate any vapors in and around the service section where those fuel tanks reside in the Dragon capsule. We're expecting that to take within the next 5 minutes or so. We were still expecting the crew out inside of an hour, so still on the timeline or a few minutes ahead, and we should be seeing Bob and Doug. Once we see those levels continue to drop around the capsule, we'll begin to step through the hatch opening process once again.
Ecco, ormai devono tirare fuori perché no? Dai, Endeavour. Ecco il sub, dai. Pure il sub. Ma raga, ma cosa c'entra il sub veramente con questa roba?
This is to make sure that the lingering NTO fumes that the team is detecting get flushed out essentially. The service section is not
secondo me figa era uno che passava e
cabin
detto
where Bob and Doug
cazzo
are.
era tranquillo, andiamo a vedere,
It's
dai, andiamo a
actually
vedere,
the part
tanto
of the capsule that is
non c'è
outside
nessuno che
of
farà live se
the
rompe il
place
cazzo.
where Bob and
Dai.
Doug are. It's external to the cabin, but it's inside the capsule itself. So you can think of it as the space between the exterior of the Dragon capsule and the interior space where Bob and Doug are. There's
I think the interior pressure vessel, essentially.
Yes, exactly. So Bob and Doug are fine. The air that they are breathing is, that nitrox mix that they've been getting throughout the entire duration of today's operations. But it'll be essentially the area below their cabin, completely sealed off from the service section. Yeah, that service section is where
Dai raga, aprite.
there's a lot of telemetry. It's where there are the prop tanks, and we're just making sure that those get aerated so that lingering fumes are swept away.
Dai.
They had detected detected higher levels than they want to see of nitrogen tetroxide. That's one of the two hypergolic fuels used in Dragon, the other one being monomethylhydrazine. Those two fuels, essentially when thrown together, even without an ignition source, will react. That's what makes them hypergolic fuels. Much simpler, more elegant solution used in a lot of on-orbit maneuvering systems in spacecraft. Again, we're just standing by.
So as you can see on your screen, there is one crew member that has kind of what looks like a...
Dragon SpaceX, don't have a huge update for you. Just letting you know the service section purge is still in work. And we'll try to get you out of there shortly.
Copy.
So as I was saying, two individuals on your screen there, one with a face mask and what looks like a scuba tank there, with some clean breathing air. There might be another crew member with the same personal protective equipment or PPE that will come on deck here.
Poco, massimo 10 minuti all'apertura
There we go. That's the kind of equipment that is required in order to perform this purge. Again, the NTO is, the fumes from that are toxic.
Han vomitato, come si sente? No, la maschera antigas.
Safe as we
Per
prepare
approfondirne.
the side hatch for opening in order to let
Dragon
Bob and Johnny
SpaceX,
egress.
looks like limits are dropping and getting pretty good.
Oh my
We're still
god, bro.
continuing with the purge just to be extra sure.
Okay, sounds good, Mike. Thank you.
So we just heard the call, the limits continuing to drop on that NTO, that nitrogen
Saluti i miei genitori.
tetroxide.
Butto giù dal balcone.
So they're just going to continue to monitor those.
Figa, aprite
doing
quella
purge,
porta lì,
essentially
Dio
flushing the air
caro.
around the service
Me la apro io
section.
con le mani, ve la apro io la porta.
For those hypergolic fuels are in Dragon. As Keith
Dai,
was talking about, they're not inside the pressure vessel, the section of the Dragon interior where Bob and Doug and their atmosphere exists. They're essentially outside the pressure vessel, but still inside the outer shell of the Dragon spacecraft.
Dato che viene in mente vi dico che l'undocking dalla stazione spaziale internazionale è avvenuto sopra il Sudafrica, appunto perché il Sudafrica è il paese di origine di Elon Musk, quindi hanno fatto per... Sì, un minuto. Mi sto dicendo perché c'è un papà che è coglione, quindi mi rompe le palle. Però sì, stavo in onore a tutti, se vogliamo così dire. Allora, intanto fra 10 minuti spero che aprano, perché io devo andare, dai, quindi non so a che cosa servano quelle bombole che hanno.
We are just about
Però dai.
52 minutes post splashdown. Again, we're just waiting for them to get good readings on the levels of any hypergol vapors still in existence around the capsule, and then they'll be able to step back in to this hatch opening. We did hear confirmation that they haven't seen any indication of leaks in
Raga, dai.
the telemetry they're still receiving from the Dragon capsule. And so,
Dragon SpaceX, we're going to purge for 1 more minute.
there we go, should be 1 more minute. And
1 more
those
minute.
levels have dropped sufficiently. We'll be
Dai,
able to
figa,
step
speriamo
back
che manchi un
in the hatch
minuto.
opening process.
Proprio la parte che è affondare la nave. dai, penso che non affondi.
Bob and Doug will be getting assistance from the recovery teams while exiting Dragon Endeavour. This is the same process for any returning long-duration crew members, as returning to a gravity-rich environment can, be a little jarring, wreak havoc with our vestibular system, which is responsible for maintaining balance and motion. Of course, as you've heard us say multiple times earlier, safety is our #1 priority with this operation. So you will see both Bob and Doug helped out of the capsule and assisted to just the few feet over to the medical quarters aboard the boat.
Yeah, if you've ever watched long-duration crews return on a Soyuz,
Speriamo bene, dai, raga.
pretty similar process where
Speriamo che
they're
l'aprono
literally
tutti i
carried out of the
minuti.
capsule and
Andare.
immediately placed down into a waiting chair where they usually get some initial medical checks out there in the field before they're then carried to an inflated medical tent. We don't have a tent, we have quarters, and they're a whole lot closer, so they'll just have a couple of feet to go from the capsule itself into those medical quarters. And then once they're in there, they'll get some initial checkouts from their flight surgeons who are on location on the boat with them. These are the people that have essentially been responsible for their health and well-being throughout their mission, both beforehand, all of their pre-flight data takes, offering them support in the lead up to launch, and then the entire time while on board the International Space Station. And then they're right here with the front line, with the recovery teams, ready to welcome them home. So it's been just about a minute since we heard that last call to the crew. We should be just about done with the purge. We're going to stand by, and hopefully we'll resume these hatch opening operations in just a moment.
Dio caro, aprite quella porta lì. Ma che apro? Senti, adesso la live devo chiudere perché termino YouTube 2 ore, quindi a 2 ore di live ci siamo.
Dragon SpaceX for update. Okay, exterior, we're seeing 3 parts per million NTO and 6 parts per billion of MMH. Nil, however, is asking that you de-stow your drinkers and take a sample inside the cabin.
Yeah, which detector, what number, Mike?
Yeah, it'll be detectors 2 and 3 in location 14.
Copy.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
Alright, so we just got the call out of the current readings of both the NTO, the nitrogen tetroxide, and the monomethyl hydrazine, either in the parts per million or the parts per billion. But just as an extra safety precaution, we heard of Neil, so we know that, and the medical authority from SpaceX on the boat, asking the crew to take out some air detectors that they have inside with them, just to do some quick sampling inside the cabin itself. So again, we've said it before, we'll continue to say it throughout, safety the top priority with this operation, so the teams are going to be very methodical and make sure that everything is in a good setup, a safe environment, not only for the crew themselves, but also for our recovery forces.
Ecco dai.
For now, Bob and Doug still inside of Crew Dragon. We are just 58 minutes post-landing.
Dai, ok, dai. Speriamo aprano quella cazzo di porta.
SpaceX Dragon with a status.
Go ahead, Doug. 0.0 for detectors 2 and 3 for NO2 and MMH. Thank you very much.
That's good copy.
Dai.
And so Doug Hurley reporting zeros across the board, no traces of either the NTO or the
Dai.
MMH.
Ok, dai. Speriamo aprano.
Dragon SpaceX for a status update. Okay, so currently our exposure limits are below limits, but the purge is actually doing a pretty good job. We saw NTO go from 3 parts per million down to 1.5 over the last few minutes. So ideally, with a lot of caution, we'd go ahead and let the purge run for a little bit longer, but we want to see how you guys are doing. If you're okay with continuing with the purge versus knock it off and get you guys out of there quickly.
Yeah, we're fine hanging out, Mike. No problem here.
Okay, thanks for that, Doug. We'll keep working the purge to get us down, and thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Yeah, let's just keep everybody safe. No reason to rush.
Yeah, we concur.
Spacecraft Commander Doug Hurley reporting the crew still doing well in Dragon, so they are good to continue to hang out. Medical authority there on the boat recommending as long as the crew is okay and still doing well inside Dragon, we'll just continue with the purge, trying to get those trace readings of any hypergol vapors all the way down to 0. Again, we're really focused on not only keeping the astronauts safe, but all of the recovery engineers and medical professionals there on the scene as well. So they're going to continue this purge, just dispelling the immediate area around the service section of the Dragon spacecraft. So this is really a series of fuel tanks outside of the pressure vessels. So where Bob and Doug are inside the Dragon spacecraft, which they did some quick readings inside the cabin and had zeros across the board. But they're just continuing to let these levels dissipate, bring it down to 0, and then we'll resume hatch operations. We're just a little over an hour now, an hour and 2 minutes post splashdown.
Yeah, good to hear Bob and Doug report that they're good hanging out, meaning they're feeling all right, and they're pretty comfortable staying inside for just a couple more minutes.
Yeah, they were doing their best prior to leaving of playing up their expected seasickness. So good. It is good to hear that they're doing well still inside the Dragon capsule.
And Dragon SpaceX, we're still seeing good indications from the purge. We're looking to go about another 5 minutes and looking for.
Ragazzi, la live la concludo qui. Spero la live vi sia piaciuta e ci vediamo un prossimo giorno. Ciao ragazzi.